a very strong police presence here on Berkeley Street in Glasgow following an early incident this morning. Police were called here at around 7:15.
In Glasgow, a murder investigation that has shaken the community has entered a critical new phase. Police have confirmed that a second suspect has now been charged in connection with the daylight killing of James Greenhorn, a 61-year-old grandfather described by family and neighbours as kind, well-known, and deeply loved. Greenhorn was stabbed to death in broad daylight, in an attack detectives say was targeted and deliberate. Earlier, Sean Murray, 30, was charged in relation to the killing. Now, investigators say a 23-year-old man has also been charged and is expected to appear in court on 16th February as police continue to piece together the events that led to Greenhorn's death. The violence unfolded on a residential Glasgow street. An ordinary setting turned into a crime scene in moments. Emergency services were called, but despite efforts to save him, Greenhorn died from his injuries, leaving a family devastated and a neighbourhood searching for answers. Detectives have stressed that the investigation remains active. The addition of a second accused marks a significant development, suggesting police believe more than one person was involved in the fatal attack. Officers continue to examine CCTV footage, forensic evidence, and witness accounts to establish the full sequence of events. For Greenhorn's loved ones, the arrests bring little comfort. The loss of a grandfather, taken suddenly and publicly, has left a lasting wound, one that no court appearance can heal. Yet authorities say every step forward is about accountability, and about ensuring that those responsible face justice. This is now a case defined by grief, escalation, and a widening legal spotlight. The murder of James Greenhorn, 61, has left Glasgow grappling with grief, disbelief, and urgent questions about how such violence could unfold in full view of the public. What began as a quiet day in a residential area ended with police cordons, forensic tents, and a community forever changed. Greenhorn, described by family and neighbours as a devoted grandfather and a familiar, friendly presence in the area, was stabbed to death in broad daylight. The attack was sudden and brutal. Emergency services rushed to the scene after reports of a seriously injured man, but despite efforts to save him, Greenhorn died from his wounds. Within minutes, the street was sealed off as a murder investigation was launched. From the outset, Police Scotland made it clear this was no random act. Detectives quickly determined that the attack appeared targeted, a conclusion that shaped the direction of the investigation. In cases like this, officers focus not only on what happened, but on why, examining relationships, recent interactions, and any possible motive that could explain why Greenhorn was singled out. Daylight violence in a residential street challenges assumptions about safety and routine. Neighbours spoke of hearing shouting and sudden commotion, then seeing emergency vehicles flood the area. What is usually an ordinary environment, homes, pavements, passing traffic, became the backdrop for a homicide scene. As forensic teams combed the area, detectives began building a timeline. CCTV footage from nearby homes and streets was seized. Witnesses were interviewed. Every movement before and after the attack was treated as potentially critical. Police appealed to the public for information, urging anyone who saw or heard anything unusual to come forward. Early in the investigation, a major development emerged. Sean Murray, 30, was charged in connection with Greenhorn's death. The charge marked a significant step forward, signalling that investigators believed they had identified one of those responsible for the fatal stabbing. But the case did not stop there. As inquiries continued, police uncovered evidence suggesting that more than one person may have been involved. That assessment has now been confirmed by a further charge. A 23-year-old man has also been accused in connection with the murder and is due to appear in court on 16th of February. The addition of a second suspect represents a critical escalation in the investigation. For detectives, multiple accused often indicate shared intent, joint action, or assistance before or after the crime. Establishing each individual's role is now a central task, determining who carried out the stabbing, who may have been present, and how events unfolded in the moments leading up to Greenhorn's death. Police Scotland has stressed that the investigation remains active and ongoing. While charges have been brought, officers continue to examine evidence to ensure the full circumstances are understood. Additional witnesses may still be identified, and forensic results can take time to complete. In homicide cases, investigators are meticulous, knowing that every detail will later be tested in court. For Greenhorn's family, the developments bring a painful mixture of answers and anguish. Loved ones have spoken of a man deeply embedded in family life, a grandfather whose days revolved around those closest to him. His death has left a void that no legal process can fill. While arrests and charges are steps toward justice, they do little to ease the shock of losing someone so suddenly and violently. Floral tributes appeared near the scene, along with messages expressing sorrow and disbelief. Residents described a lingering unease, a sense that something fundamental had been disturbed. Even as daily routines resume, the memory of what happened remains close to the surface. Authorities have sought to reassure the public, emphasizing that targeted attacks typically do not pose a broader risk to the community. Increased patrols were carried out in the days following the killing, both to gather information and to provide reassurance. Still, the incident has reignited conversations about knife crime, public safety, and how disputes can escalate into fatal violence. Legal proceedings now loom large. With 2 suspects charged, the case will move through the Scottish justice system, where prosecutors will be required to prove not only what happened, but each accused person's involvement. Court appearances will bring further scrutiny, as evidence gathered during the investigation is presented and challenged. At this stage, police have been careful not to speculate publicly about motive. That restraint reflects both legal necessity and investigative discipline. Premature conclusions can compromise cases, and detectives are focused on ensuring that any charges brought are supported by robust evidence. What is already clear, however, is the human cost. A 61-year-old man lost his life in an act of violence that unfolded in plain sight. A family is mourning a grandfather who never came home. A community is left questioning how such a tragedy could occur on its doorstep. As the murder investigation into the death of James Greenhorn continues, detectives are now focused on one overriding objective: establishing exactly how the attack unfolded and the role each accused played. The decision to charge a second suspect is not procedural. It signals a shift in how investigators understand the violence that took Greenhorn's life. Police Scotland sources indicate that the case rapidly evolved from a single suspect inquiry into a broader investigation involving joint action. In homicide cases, a second charge often reflects new evidence, CCTV footage, witness testimony, or forensic findings, that changes the interpretation of events. Investigators do not add accused individuals lightly. The threshold for doing so requires corroboration strong enough to withstand court scrutiny. In this case, detectives believe the daylight stabbing was not spontaneous. From early on, officers described the killing as targeted, suggesting prior intent rather than an opportunistic confrontation. That assessment now appears reinforced by the charging of a second man, aged 23, who is due to appear in court on 16th February. According to standard investigative practice, police will now be working to map a minute-by-minute timeline of the day Greenhorn was killed. This includes identifying where each suspect was before the attack, how they arrived at the scene, and what actions were taken immediately afterward. CCTV cameras, both public and private, are central to this process. In residential areas, footage from doorbells, nearby shops, and traffic cameras can provide overlapping angles that, when combined, reconstruct movements with striking precision. Witness evidence is equally critical. Daylight attacks increase the likelihood that members of the public saw or heard something: raised voices, rapid movement, or individuals fleeing the scene. Even details that seem insignificant to a witness at the time can become decisive when aligned with other evidence. Police have continued to encourage anyone who has not yet come forward to do so. Forensic analysis also plays a pivotal role. Specialists examine the scene for blood patterns, weapon traces, clothing fibers, and footwear impressions. These elements help determine where the attack began, how it progressed, and whether more than one person participated directly. In multi-accused cases, forensics can help differentiate between primary and secondary involvement, distinctions that carry enormous legal weight. The earlier charging of Sean Murray, 30, marked the first major breakthrough in the case. Prosecutors now face the task of demonstrating not just that Greenhorn was unlawfully killed, but how responsibility is apportioned between the accused. Scottish law requires clear evidence of participation, whether through direct violence, encouragement, or assistance before or after the act. The addition of a second accused raises important legal questions that will soon be addressed in court. Was the attack planned in advance? Did both men know Greenhorn? Did one act while the other assisted, or were roles more fluid? These are not matters of speculation. They are questions the Crown will need to answer through evidence. For Greenhorn's family, the emergence of a second suspect brings renewed emotional strain. Each development reopens the trauma of the original loss, forcing loved ones to relive details they would rather forget. Family liaison officers remain involved, ensuring relatives are informed before major updates become public. In Scotland, this support is considered essential in cases involving sudden violent death. Within the wider community, the charging of a second suspect has reinforced the seriousness of the crime. Criminologists note that multi-suspect violent attacks often stem from escalating disputes. Understanding those dynamics is critical, not only for securing convictions, but for preventing similar incidents in the future. Each case offers insights into how conflicts spiral and how they might be interrupted earlier. The legal road ahead is now clearly defined. Both accused will face court proceedings where evidence will be disclosed, challenged, and tested. Preliminary hearings will determine how the case proceeds, what evidence is admissible, and whether further charges are warranted. These early stages are methodical and often slow, reflecting the seriousness of what is at stake. Police Scotland has been careful to emphasise that charging is not the end of the investigation. Officers continue to work the case, knowing that additional evidence can emerge even after initial court appearances. What remains undeniable is the scale of the loss. A 61-year-old grandfather was killed in a violent act that unfolded in seconds, but will echo for years. As the justice system moves forward, the focus will shift from shock to accountability, on establishing the truth of what happened and ensuring those responsible are held to account under the law. This phase of the story is defined by momentum. The investigation has widened, the legal stakes have increased, and the community continues to watch closely. The next court appearance will mark another critical step, one that may bring clarity, but will also underscore the irreversible cost of the violence that claimed James Greenhorn's life. With two men now charged in connection with the murder of James Greenhorn, the investigation has entered its most consequential phase, the transition from police inquiry to formal court process. For prosecutors, this stage is about transforming months of evidence gathering into a case capable of meeting the highest criminal standard under Scottish law. The newly charged 23-year-old suspect is due to appear in court on 16th February, a hearing that will be closely watched. At this stage, proceedings are largely procedural, but they carry immense significance. The court appearance will formally outline the charges, confirm custody status, and begin the process through which evidence is disclosed to the defence. Meanwhile, Sean Murray, 30, remains at the centre of the case as the first individual charged. Prosecutors must now demonstrate how both accused are linked to the fatal stabbing, either through direct action, shared intent, or assistance that contributed to the crime. Legal experts note that cases involving multiple accused are particularly complex. The Crown must establish each person's role with clarity. Evidence that may seem straightforward in a single defendant case: who carried the weapon? Who initiated the confrontation? Who may have encouraged or enabled the violence? These distinctions will shape how the case proceeds. Over the coming weeks, prosecutors are expected to rely heavily on CCTV analysis, forensic findings, and witness testimony. CCTV evidence is often central in daylight attacks, offering visual confirmation of movements, interactions, and timing. When combined with mobile phone data and witness accounts, it allows the Crown to present a coherent narrative of events before, during, and after the killing. Forensic evidence will also be critical. Experts will likely testify about injury patterns, bloodstain distribution, and any recovered weapons or clothing. Such analysis can help establish proximity, sequence of actions, and whether more than one individual took part in the assault. In cases of joint accusation, forensic science often becomes the decisive factor in distinguishing levels of responsibility. The defence teams, meanwhile, will begin preparing their responses. At this stage, they may challenge the sufficiency of evidence, question identification, or dispute interpretations of forensic findings. Scottish criminal procedure allows for rigorous testing of the Crown's case, particularly in serious charges such as murder, where the consequences are severe. For Greenhorn's family, each court date is a reminder of the loss that brought them here. Family members are supported by liaison officers who help navigate proceedings that can feel overwhelming and impersonal. While the courts focus on evidence and law, families continue to grieve the absence of a grandfather taken without warning. Public interest in the case remains high. The combination of a daylight killing, a beloved local figure, and multiple accused has kept the spotlight on the investigation. Police Scotland has reiterated calls for restraint, urging the public to avoid speculation that could prejudice future proceedings. In Scotland, strict rules apply to protect the fairness of trials, particularly once charges are active. The broader impact of the case continues to ripple through the community. Residents have spoken of a lingering unease, not a fear of immediate danger, but a deeper awareness of how quickly violence can erupt. Community leaders have emphasised solidarity with the victim's family and confidence in the justice process, while also renewing conversations about conflict prevention and public safety. As the case advances, prosecutors will determine whether additional charges are appropriate or whether the existing charges fully reflect the evidence. While no further suspects have been announced, police have made it clear that investigations remain ongoing until all lines of inquiry are exhausted. The next court appearance will not provide final answers, but it will mark a turning point, from investigation to prosecution. It is the moment when the focus shifts decisively to accountability, where evidence gathered in the streets of Glasgow is examined in the controlled setting of a courtroom. For now, the story is defined by anticipation. 2 accused men stand before the law. A family waits for justice. And a city watches as the legal system begins the slow, deliberate work of determining responsibility for a life lost in broad daylight. The outcome is still to come, but the path forward is now set, and every step will carry weight for all involved. As this case moves toward the courts, Glasgow remains caught between grief and resolve. The daylight killing of James Greenhorn, a 61-year-old grandfather described as kind and well-loved, has left a permanent mark on a neighbourhood that never expected such violence at its doorstep. With Sean Murray, 30, already charged, and a second accused, aged 23, now set to appear in court on 16th of February, the investigation has reached a defining stage. Prosecutors will be tasked with proving not only what happened, but how responsibility is shared when more than one person is alleged to have played a role. That process will be careful, evidence-led, and exacting. For Greenhorn's family, court dates cannot restore what was taken. What they can offer is accountability, an official reckoning grounded in law rather than speculation. Police Scotland has emphasised that while charges are in place, the inquiry continues, with detectives examining CCTV, forensic findings, and witness testimony to establish a complete and accurate timeline. The broader community response has been one of quiet solidarity. Floral tributes and messages of remembrance reflect a shared determination to honour Greenhorn's life, not just the circumstances of his death. Residents have spoken of the shock that lingers, alongside confidence that the justice system will do its work. As proceedings unfold, the focus will remain on facts, fairness, and due process. This is how answers are reached, deliberately, transparently, and in open court. For now, Glasgow waits, holding space for a family in mourning and for a legal process designed to determine the truth. If you value fact-checked, responsible reporting on cases that shape our communities, like this video to support serious journalism, share it so others stay informed, and subscribe for more clear, cinematic news coverage grounded in verified sources.